In the day of my long-awaited promotion, I returned home to find my room empty and my things packed in boxes in the hallway. "Your brother is moving in with us. He needs it more," my mom said, without even congratulating me. I silently gathered my things and left. 3 weeks later, when they learned about my new salary, their calls wouldn't stop. I still remember the shock of seeing my once personal space completely transformed. My posters were gone, leaving only faint outlines on the walls where they'd hung for years. My bookshelves had been emptied, my desk cleared. Even the bedding had been changed, not hastily but deliberately, fresh sheets with a pattern I'd never seen before. It was obvious this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They'd been planning this, probably for weeks, without bothering to mention it to me. "I thought you'd be at work until 6," my mom said, hovering in the doorway, watching me take in the scene. There wasn't a trace of guilt in her voice, just mild annoyance at having been caught in the act. I felt my throat tighten and my hands start to tremble, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. After years of hard work, I'd finally been promoted to financial director, a position I'd been working toward since I started at the company. "I got out early. Big day at work," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "Oh? That's nice," she replied, clearly uninterested. "Anyway, Jason really needs the space now that he's, going through a rough patch again." I just nodded and began collecting my things from the boxes they'd packed. In that moment, I realized something fundamental. This wasn't just about the room. This was about who I'd always been to them. The backup plan, the safety net, the afterthought. What they didn't know is that I'd just become a financial director, with a salary they could only dream of. And I decided right then and there that they would never know. Growing up in our house always felt like living in my brother's shadow. Jason was the golden child, charismatic, athletic, and perpetually in need of just a little more support. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention because I had my head on straight. At least, that's what my parents said whenever they needed to justify treating us differently. When I received a full scholarship to college, my parents nodded and said, "Not bad." When Jason barely graduated high school, they threw him a party that cost more than my entire freshman year textbook budget. "He needs the encouragement," Mom explained when I questioned the disparity. "You're already motivated." By my junior year of college, I was already helping with bills at home. Despite working on a low-paying internship, I sent money for utilities and groceries whenever I could. "Just until your father's business picks up," Mom would say. It never did. Meanwhile, Jason drifted between minimum wage jobs, none lasting more than a few months. Yet somehow, he always had money for new gaming equipment and weekend trips with friends. "Jason's finding himself," was Dad's standard explanation. Apparently, finding yourself required financial backing from everyone else in the family, especially me. Even basic respect seemed too much to ask for. When they moved to the new house 4 years ago, Jason automatically got the larger bedroom with the ensuite bathroom. "He needs his privacy," Mom said. I got the smaller room next to the laundry, where the dryer's buzzer would wake me up at all hours. They missed my college graduation because Jason had a football game that weekend. Not that he was playing. He just wanted to watch it with friends. "We'll celebrate when you get home," Dad promised. We never did. Every achievement of mine was met with the same tepid response. "That's good, but don't get too full of yourself." Every failure of Jason's was cushioned. It's not his fault. The system is rigged against creative types like him. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. I was building my own life, making my own success. I didn't need their validation. But deep down, a part of me still hoped that someday they would see me, really see me, and be proud. Moving to my new apartment was a quiet affair. A colleague at work knew someone renting a small but affordable place downtown, and I signed the lease that same day. I moved my boxes alone. No one from my family even offered to help. "You're not taking those old books, are you?" Mom asked, gesturing to my collection of first editions I'd been gathering since high school. "They're just collecting dust." I packed them first. In the 2 weeks after I moved out, my family called exactly once. Not to check if I was settling in, not to ask about my promotion, but to see if I could pay for Jason's car insurance. "He's going through a tough time," Mom explained, as if that was something new. They didn't even ask about my new position or why I had suddenly moved out. I threw myself into work, decorating my new apartment and trying not to dwell on the fact that the people who should care most about my success didn't even know about it. Then came the company's quarterly reception, a formal event where my promotion would be officially announced. I was standing by the drinks table when I heard someone call my name. It was Richard, one of my mother's oldest friends and a business partner of my father's years ago. "Emily," I had no idea you worked here, he said, genuinely surprised to see me. For almost 5 years now, I replied, shaking his hand. Our conversation was pleasant until the CEO called everyone's attention and announced several promotions, including mine. Richard's eyes widened as my new title was announced. Financial director? My God, your daughter is a real star. Susan must be incredibly proud, he said, clapping enthusiastically. I couldn't help but laugh. Susan? My mother? She doesn't even know where I work. The look on Richard's face shifted from congratulatory to confused, then embarrassed. He quickly changed the subject, but I noticed him step away shortly after, phone in hand. And that's when I knew the social avalanche was about to begin. Soon my parents' phone would be ringing with calls from mutual acquaintances sharing news of their daughter's unexpected success. They would never believe I could achieve such a position on my own. The notifications started during the Uber ride home from the reception. By the time I unlocked my apartment door, my phone screen was flooded. 15 missed calls from Mom, 8 from Dad, and even 3 from Jason, a person who typically communicated with me only through Mom-relayed messages. I kicked off my heels and debated whether to check the voicemails. Curiosity won. I pressed play on the first one from Mom, putting it on speaker as I poured myself a celebratory glass of wine. Honey, why didn't you tell us about your promotion? We always knew you'd go far. Let's have dinner together. There's something important we need to discuss. The enthusiasm in her voice was jarring compared to her complete indifference just weeks ago. I played another message, this time from Dad. Emily, call us back. We heard about your new position. That's really something, kiddo. Even Jason had left a message. Hey sis, congrats on the big job. That's awesome. We should catch up soon. I sat on my new couch, wine in hand, messages playing one after another, each more enthusiastic than the last. And something inside me just clicked. For years, I'd been their emergency fund with an emotional credit limit. When they needed money, I was family. When they needed someone to praise, encourage, or simply acknowledge, suddenly I wasn't worth the effort. Now that I'd become a bigger bank account, suddenly they wanted a reunion. Number I deserved better. I didn't delete the messages. Instead, I saved them all. Reminders of what it took for them to finally notice me. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and drafted a plan for how I would handle them going forward. Calmly, without emotion, but with clear boundaries they couldn't cross. For the first time in my life, I felt in control of our relationship. And it was intoxicating. Updated. Hey Reddit, I wanted to thank everyone for the supportive comments on my last post. It's been both validating and eye-opening to see how many of you have dealt with similar family dynamics. Some of you asked what happened next with my family, so here's the update. And let me tell you, their reaction when they realized they couldn't manipulate me anymore? Priceless. Have you ever had that moment when you finally stood up to someone who always took advantage of you and watched their world shatter when they realized you weren't playing their game anymore? The restaurant they chose for our celebratory dinner was nicer than anywhere they'd ever taken me before. Mom wore her pearl necklace, the one reserved for special occasions, and Dad had actually ironed his shirt. Jason looked uncomfortable in clothes that were clearly new, fidgeting with his collar throughout the appetizers. We are just so proud of you, honey, Mom gushed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Financial director. And at your age, I always told your father you were destined for great things. I smiled politely, withdrawing my hand. Funny, I don't remember that conversation. Dad cleared his throat. Well, we always knew you had potential. You were always so responsible. Unlike me, Jason added with a self-deprecating laugh. Seriously though, sis, it's pretty cool what you've accomplished. I nodded, taking a sip of my wine. Thank you. For almost 45 minutes, they kept up the charade, asking about my responsibilities, my team, whether I had my own office. Mom even took pictures of me for the family album, an album I'd never seen a single photo of myself in before. Then, as dessert menus appeared, the real purpose of the dinner emerged. So, Emily, Dad began, his tone shifting to something more serious. Your brother has been thinking about his future. He's looking at going back to school, getting a degree in business. That's nice, I said, knowing exactly where this was heading. The thing is, Jason jumped in, I need a reliable car to get to campus. Nothing fancy, just something dependable. And with my credit the way it is, we thought perhaps you could help him out with a loan, Mom finished. Just until he gets on his feet. You know your brother has so much potential. I smiled softly and set down my fork. Unfortunately, all my funds are currently tied up in my new life. You know, after I had to move out so suddenly. The silence that followed was delicious. Mom nearly choked on her wine, and Jason's face went pale. But we're family, Dad said, using the tone that had always made me cave in the past. Yes, I agreed. We are. And family respects each other's space and celebrates each other's successes before asking for money, don't they? Over the next few months, their tactics evolved. When the direct approach failed, they tried surprise visits to my apartment, always with some small favor in mind. Dad needed a loan for a business opportunity. Mom's car required repairs. Jason needed money for textbooks, despite not actually enrolling in any classes. Each time, I politely but firmly declined. I'm afraid that's not possible right now, became my mantra. After everything we've done for you, Mom would say, her voice dripping with wounded disappointment. Which was what exactly? I would ask, my tone genuinely curious. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, tensions were at a breaking point. I almost declined the invitation, but some part of me wanted to see this through, to stand in my power in the house where I'd felt powerless for so long. The dinner itself was a masterclass in passive aggression. Mom kept mentioning families that stick together through thick and thin. Dad repeatedly brought up children who remember their roots once they find success. Then came the bombshell. Your brother's been accepted to state university, Mom announced, beaming. Spring semester. We've put down the deposit, but we'll need help with tuition. Oh, I replied, cutting into my turkey. That's wonderful news. I'm sure he'll do great. Well, we were hoping, Dad began, that I would pay for it. I finished for him. It's an investment in his future, Mom said. And honestly, Emily, it's the least you could do. We've supported you your entire life. Something in me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. Supported me? I repeated, setting down my fork. The way you supported me when you packed up my room without warning? The way you supported me when you didn't even ask about my promotion? The way you supported me financially all those years I was paying half your bills while working entry-level jobs? That's different, Dad started. Is it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, the only thing that's different is that now I'm worth something to you. Now I have money you want, status you can brag about, and suddenly I'm your beloved daughter again. How dare you? Mom gasped. After everything we've done. Name one thing, I interrupted. Name one concrete thing you've done to support my success in the last 5 years. Just one. The silence was deafening. I can name dozens I've done for this family, I continued. The electric bill last winter, Dad's prescription copays, the down payment for Jason's last car, the one he totaled while drunk. I've been this family's safety net for years, and not once did anyone even say thank you. Jason stared at his plate. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I think I'll skip dessert, I said, placing my napkin on the table. Happy Thanksgiving. As I walked out, Mom called after me. You can't just abandon your family. I turned back one last time. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just treating you the way you've always treated me. Like an option, not a priority. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. The next day, Dad left an angry voicemail about how I'd ruined Thanksgiving and broken your mother's heart. I deleted it without responding. 3 days later, Jason texted, Look, I know Mom and Dad can be a lot, but I really do need help with tuition. I replied simply, Have you tried applying for scholarships? I did. He didn't respond. A week passed, then 2. The calls became less frequent, then stopped altogether. It was as if they were conducting an experiment. How long would Emily last before she cracked and came crawling back to make peace? What they didn't understand was that I wasn't at war with them. I was simply done carrying them. Christmas approached and Mom reached out again, this time with a new tactic. We're having a small gathering at the house. Nothing fancy. Your Aunt Judy will be so disappointed if you don't come. I sent my regrets and a gift card for Aunt Judy. New Year's. It's a family tradition, Emily. Don't be childish. I spent it with colleagues watching fireworks from a rooftop bar downtown. Valentine's Day brought a tearful call from Mom. Your father's having health problems, Emily. He's too proud to ask, but they're expensive tests. I sent flowers to the hospital, but no check. By spring, they'd given up the direct approach. Instead, I heard through mutual friends that Mom was telling people I'd changed, become obsessed with money and status. Dad was apparently describing me as too good for her family now. It should have hurt. Maybe it did. A little. But mostly I felt relieved. The pretense was gone. We were finally being honest about who we were to each other. In April, exactly 6 months after my promotion, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Jason, looking uncomfortable in a badly fitting suit, hovering in my doorway. Can I come in? he asked. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. What can I do for you, Jason? He fidgeted with his tie. I got a job. Nothing fancy, just assistant manager at the electronics store. But it's something. Congratulations, I said, genuinely surprised. That's great. Yeah. Well, he cleared his throat. After Thanksgiving, I did some thinking. About what you said. About doing things for yourself. I nodded, waiting. Anyway, I just wanted to say... He looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. You were right. About a lot of things, and I'm sorry. Of all the scenarios I'd imagined for this family drama, Jason being the first to break ranks wasn't one of them. Thank you for saying that, I replied. Also, he continued, I've been talking to Mom and Dad about how they treat us differently. They don't really get it, but I do. Now, I didn't know what to say. He stood up to leave. I'm not asking for money, he added quickly. I just wanted you to know that at least one person in this family sees what happened. And it wasn't right. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time, processing. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was something. A crack in the foundation of denial my family had built. 3 days later, I received an email from my father. No greeting, just a single line. Your mother and I would like to meet. Just to talk? I stared at those words on my screen, cursor hovering over delete. Instead, I replied, I'm available next Thursday at 7 p.m. The coffee shop on Main Street. Just talking. That meeting with my parents didn't magically fix everything. No single conversation could undo years of patterns. But it was a beginning. Dad did most of the talking, which was unusual. He spoke stiffly, like someone reciting a speech they'd practiced but didn't fully believe. We may have been less supportive than we could have been, he admitted, which was as close to an apology as he could manage. Mom cried, of course. She tried to hold my hand across the table, and I let her, briefly. We established new boundaries that night. I wouldn't be contributing financially to the family anymore. I wouldn't be expected at every holiday or Sunday dinner. And most importantly, they would respect my space, both physical and emotional. If you want a relationship with me, I told them, it has to be because you value me, not what I can do for you. The months that followed were a strange adjustment period for all of us. Jason, surprisingly, adapted the best. He stayed at his job, moved into a modest apartment with roommates, and even started community college classes, paid for with his own money and financial aid. Mom struggled the most. Old habits die hard, and she still occasionally slipped into asking for small favors or making comments about how blessed they would be if I helped with this or that expense. Each time, I gently but firmly reminded her of our agreement. Almost a year to the day after finding my room emptied, I bought my own condo, a beautiful 2-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. I filled it with books, art, and furniture I loved. For the first time in my life, I woke up without anxiety, without wondering what family catastrophe I'd be expected to solve that day. I made new friends at work, took up hobbies I'd always put off, and even started dating again. The weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying, the constant responsibility for everyone else's well-being, was gone, and without it, I felt almost weightless. Then, 11 months after our confrontation at Thanksgiving, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. Not a text, not an email, an actual letter on stationery. Dear Emily, it began, I've written this letter a dozen times in my head, but putting it on paper makes it real in a way I've been avoiding. I'm sorry, not just for the day we packed up your room, but for all the days before and after when we treated you like your needs and achievements mattered less. I don't expect this letter to change anything between us. I just needed you to know that I see it now. How unfair we were. How much we took you for granted. If you're willing, I'd like to meet for coffee sometime. Just us. No expectations, no requests. Just a mother who misses her daughter. I read it 3 times, searching for the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But for once, it seemed there wasn't one. We met at a quiet cafe the following weekend. My mother looked older, more vulnerable than I remembered. For the first time, she spoke to me as an equal, not as an ATM or a babysitter for Jason. I've been seeing a therapist, she admitted, stirring her tea. She's helped me understand some things about how I've treated you, about favoritism and how damaging it can be. We talked for 2 hours that day. Really talked, without the usual defenses and dynamics. She didn't ask for money, not even once. I haven't returned to the old relationship with my family. That died the day I found my belongings in boxes. But I've built a new one, on my terms. We see each other monthly for dinner. Sometimes it's awkward, sometimes surprisingly pleasant. Jason has become someone I actually enjoy spending time with, now that he's standing on his own 2 feet. Dad is still dad, stubborn, set in his ways, but making an effort in his own limited fashion. Mom is trying harder than I ever thought she would. Last month, she actually came to my office for lunch and seemed genuinely interested in my work. Sometimes you have to lose what you thought was family to find your self-respect. And sometimes people deserve a second chance. But only after they've realized they've already wasted their first. The room they emptied that day is still Jason's room when I visit. I don't mind anymore. Because I've built something better than a bedroom in my parents' house. I've built a life that's entirely my own, where I'm never an afterthought, never a convenient solution to someone else's problem. I haven't forgiven everything, and some days the old resentments still surface. But I'm learning that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts them. I'm learning that boundaries aren't walls. They're the foundation of any healthy relationship. Updated. So many of you have messaged asking if my family ever truly changed, or if they just got better at hiding their true colors. Honestly, it's a mix. Mom has genuinely tried to understand her favoritism issues. Dad still struggles, but makes an effort in his own way. And Jason? He's grown up more in the past year than in his entire adult life before. The most important thing I've learned is that sometimes people can change, but only when they face real consequences for their actions. Have you ever had to completely rebuild a relationship from scratch, or was it too damaged to save? My question for all of you. Have you ever had to establish hard boundaries with family members who always took you for granted? And did they actually respect those boundaries in the long run?